say that because I know for sure that I would only see the details of this story in like a Lifetime movie or a Tyler Perry movie. I fought the last 8 years to put it behind me, but I have accepted that it is my life, my story, and I must accept it as such in order to be a stronger, smarter, and more faithful woman of God. In 2004, I was incarcerated for the first time at only 20 years old. I spent my 21st birthday in solitary confinement, proving myself worthy of being incarcerated in the first place. When I went into prison, people, they want to fight you, they want to test you. I was young, and so they wanted to make sure that I was worthy to be there to begin with. They questioned my ability to withstand the circumstances of my incarceration, and I earned my respect, much at the detriment of my own semi-idealistic freedom from confinement. I was released a year later in 2005 and re-incarcerated with a parole violation and 4 new charges at 24 years old, just weeks before my 25th birthday. The second commitment, because that's what they call it, a commitment, was 2 years, and I was released April 21st of 2010, 8 years ago. I have never looked back. If you're wondering, all my cases were related to finance. Forgery were 4 of my cases, 2 were assault and resisting law enforcement, and 1 was for theft. And I just want to say, God is awesome, because now, had I tried to fight the police nowadays, my ending may have been a lot different than it is. But during my first incarceration, I remember describing it similar to an all-girls school, a very strict all-girls school, but that may be what contributed to me returning the second time. The second time that I was incarcerated, I wasn't much older, but I remember praying that God help me to walk away from this situation and walk beside me so I wouldn't repeat it. When I was released the last time, I never looked back, but I noticed that the devil takes advantage of our weaknesses. I was always very computer savvy and a bona fide smooth talker, and those were the things of which that I was proud, but that also helped create the scenario that tied me to those circumstances. My lifestyle before incarceration was risky. I stripped to save enough money for food and for the hotel that I was living in while I was running from my parole violations. I used about every drug known to kill the pain that poked at me from the moment that I opened my eyes in the morning. I was in unhealthy and abusive relationships, one which I am now prone to seizures because of, and I overall lived my life as if it didn't matter. I had no desire to do the right thing because my state of mind was primarily to survive at any cost, no matter the risk. When it got bad enough that I could recognize just how destructive I had become to myself, I prayed to be delivered from my situation, and within weeks, I was incarcerated for the second time. I remember thinking, God, this is not what I meant. Yet, I was relieved to know that I was finished running from myself and my current life, and it was time to face all that I was guilty of without choice. I saw the judge who told me that I could have been facing 37 years had he decided to max my sentences. By God's grace, I received 7 4-year sentences, all of which ran together, but because I was a prior offender, and Missouri sets laws in place after an inmate's first incarceration, I knew for a fact that I would have a mandatory 40% for what they call a prior and persistent criminal, and that I would also commit to that 40% before I was eligible for parole. I was relieved to know that I had only been given the 4-year sentences, all the while recognizing that I would be gone for at least 2 years, and I was. When I arrived back there, I saw familiar faces, I saw a lot of new faces, I saw old guards that were there when I left, I saw new guards. I recognized this place as being familiar, as crazy as that sounds. When I received my assignment to my dorm and walked in, a guard that was there when I left spoke to me before I got in the door and said, "Welcome back." I remember feeling horrified, judged, and worthless more than anything. This wasn't like a restaurant or a hangout spot, this was prison, and a guard recognized me upon my entry. I remember thinking, never again. I came through orientation and into population with murderers and prostitutes, child molesters and child killers, some of which were my roommates, my bosses on my job, which by the way, only paid $15 a month, and some that I recognized from television, like Precious Doe's mother. I don't know if any of you all remember that case. I was incarcerated with her, and I had to coexist with these women. I was roommates with a child killer, a meth addict, and I probably had 30 different roommates my entire stay there because we were constantly moved around for various reasons, without a moment's notice and without questions asked. We were all criminals, not separated by the severity of our cases, but placed together on an even playing field because we were all deemed menaces to society in which we lived. I used the bathroom when I had to go, but I was restricted at times. So I learned to use the bathroom well before I knew I couldn't. I was counted at least 5 times a day, some when I was asleep, some at 4 a.m., and I had to be present on time and in that area that I was assigned to be in at that time with no exceptions and no excuses. If I wanted to eat, I had to eat at certain times, and I can't think of one meal that I could say was to die for, or even properly seasoned for that matter. There were huge gaps in my day, and now I think back, I recognize that those were times to just make me think, to sit back and reflect on the fact that this is my life. This is what I've come to based on my choices. Every person that I came in contact with had issues with instant gratification. We wanted canteen right now, phone calls, visits, time right now, and yet we were all like mice on a spinning wheel. There was no judge to see, there was no pardon coming. I knew that I had to accept this as my situation. I wasn't going anywhere for a while. I thought about jumping over the balcony so many times, but what if this doesn't kill me? They will just bring me right back here in a wheelchair. I got okay with knowing that I had no choice but to do what I chose to do. These were my choices. I knew I chose this life. I knew the consequences. This was my second time. Talk about making a believer out of someone. I bonded with so many people because of our circumstances, heard so many stories, and trusted no one. My faith was completely depleted. Meanwhile, I was being restored, and I had no idea. While I was there, I worked in maintenance for a while. I learned to lay concrete sidewalks, hang drywall, lay basement foundation, and fix just about anything made of wood. And remember, y'all, this was $15 a month, okay? I took college courses, and I did everything that I could to make my days fly by, but it seemed like they only crawled by. I didn't cry, I was too focused to cry. After not seeing my mother for years and not being able to hear her voice, I never doubted she was praying for me, even when I didn't have the strength to pray for myself. I called home, and she said things to let me know that she was still praying, that she was still in my corner, and that her love was unconditional. And because I only got 15-minute calls with my mother, I learned how to encourage myself. I learned to speak life into what I felt was dead. I was crippled by myself. My own selfish actions broke me. They imprisoned me. Even worse than the walls that surrounded me was me, myself. I started waking up and being grateful that I wasn't running. Nobody was looking for me. I wasn't stumbling over to some old sweaty beer breath man for money when I was worth much more. I wasn't having to lock my own bedroom door to sleep at night because I was afraid I'd wake up fighting, and I started being okay with being there. I began to recognize that as horrible as my situation was, I was being remade. Amen. On the day of my release, I cried when they called my name for the last time to leave. I said goodbye to people that I considered friends because I knew I would never see them again, unless it was beyond those walls, and the plan was to not see them even then. I really wanted to move on with no reminders of that life, but even now, I'm reminded. My mom picked me up, and the minute that I stepped out of those gates, I realized that a lot changes in 2 years. I had to adjust to being in the real world. For about the first month, I still woke up at 4 a.m. on schedule every day as if I'd be counted. I had many overwhelming moments just leaving to go to the store or being in a restaurant. Just doing basic, ordinary things made me anxious. I was mandated to attend drug treatment upon my release, and I did 5 days a week from 8 a.m. to 4:30, and I was expected to find a job as well during that time. I did eventually, and had help getting back on my feet from my mother. She helped me with everything. Getting an apartment, getting food, emotional support, financial support, everything. I was still being crippled by my decisions. In the midst of this, I was having seizures just about any and everywhere, and barely able to afford that medication, but I had it. I started rebuilding my life by doing everything that I had to, and completed drug treatment successfully in June of 2012, and was released from parole supervision on September of 2012. And so I was excited, but that's when my truest test started. I had to begin to encourage myself and others. I met so many women just like me with similar stories without the support that I had in my treatment class. So many women that had children and had lives, but that made genuine mistakes, and that was the day that I let my shame go. I turned my shame into action. I began to work on a plan to help the women that I knew and those that I didn't, because I recognized the struggle. Incarcerated women are overlooked because there's a higher percentage of men incarcerated. However, the dynamic is wildly different. A lot of these women are mothers. Most of the women that I met had children, either in the state or in foster care, living on the streets, or following the same path that their mothers chose. I even knew some mothers that bought dope from their children. I just woke up one day and decided that I wanted to help. I wanted to make changes. Recognizing that I could relate to so many of these women and their experiences, I decided to start an organization, Bella Women for Change. My organization is designed to assist the prior offender female community with resources in order to lower the recidivism rate among female offenders. We work to ensure that women have support, counseling, housing, and educational resources. And because of this, I have come in contact with women that I did time with, the ones I told you I never wanted to see again. My vision is to help these women and pray that knowing my story will help them put their shame to bed as well. Being incarcerated taught me to encourage myself. Being alone in isolation taught me that I have the ability to speak life and strength into my situation, and that I have the strength to overcome what was made to destroy me. Having my freedom taken taught me to listen to myself and those around me, and to recognize that what is meant to destroy me can be used to rebuild me. Losing 2 years of my life taught me that the power of prayer and meditation are one of the best things that you can have. Sitting alone, being by yourself, I had a lot of time to myself, and having conversations with God and listening for his response can add power to your action. Prayer is when we talk to God, and when we meditate, we should be listening to God. Leaving my family, friends, and life has taught me that no matter my circumstances, it was all designed for my good. My life was saved. I'm free. And I'm happy because I haven't looked back. I don't worry if the police will look for me, if they'll knock on my door, drag me off from somewhere, because when I tell you, it took 4 of them to get me in the back of that police car. I was not going easy that second time. Even though I'm still nervous when they get behind me, I know that in the midst of hurt, God heals. He's still restoring me. He's still rebuilding me and strengthening me. But I will never again be confined in my body or my mind. I'm healed. So encourage yourself. Listen to your inner voice. Pray and meditate. And remember that in the midst of whatever your struggle, God is working within you to rebuild you, to strengthen you, and to heal you. Thank you.